Hello and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode number 24, Sunday, July 28th, 2019.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back, listeners. I'm your host, Courtney, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Emily, for the third installment of our summer series.
Hey listeners, welcome back. We are here to talk about Kingdom Keepers 5 and 6, Shell Game, and Dark Passage.
So I gave a similar intro on episode 23, but again, if you're joining us for the first time, this is different than what we've done in the past, over the past year or so that we've been podcasting. We usually focus on one book or subject at a time, but this time we're diving into fiction and we're really going through a 7-book series, doing about 2 books per episode. So you are on part 3 if you're worried about spoilers or you'd like to read along. I definitely recommend going back to episode 22 where we started this, because today we're talking about books 5 and 6, so there will definitely be spoilers ahead. Consider this your official warning. If you're in between books, we'll kind of try to give you a little heads up as we move into book 6 as well. But the good news is if you're not enjoying this series, we only have one more book left, and that will be episode 25 coming to you at the end of the summer, and then we'll get back to some of our regularly scheduled content, like author interviews or nonfiction works. Definitely we'll want to hear your feedback on how this summer has gone, so we'll let you know where you can keep in touch with us at the end of the episode. Before we get to books 5 and 6, though, Emily, do you want to give just a high-level recap of books 3 and 4?
Yes, so this is a long series, so it's good to jump back a little bit. So where we left our Kingdom Keepers, we were mostly in Epcot and Disney's Hollywood Studios, where our 5 Kingdom Keepers battled for the base. The base is where all of the internet computer servers are. The war wages on between these young teenagers and the Overtakers, a group of dangerous Disney villains, including Maleficent, Cruella de Vil, and the Evil Queen, who are trying to resurrect the almighty Chernabog. When we last saw this group, we found that the most important leader of all the Disney characters, Mickey Mouse, is missing. And the Kingdom Keepers are about to head on a Disney cruise as their DHI, Disney Host Interactive Technology, expands beyond Walt Disney World. So we had a plethora of things happening. Books 3 and 4 really set us up for the main plot, and I think 5 and 6 really starts to unveil a lot of what we're going to see in this final showdown in 7.
Yeah, we're really kind of getting into the heart of it here. So I'll go ahead and dive us into book 5. This is Shell Game. It was published in 2012. All right, so here's the description for Shell Game from the back of the book. As the Disney Dream joins the cruise fleet, a special treat is in store for guests aboard its inaugural sail from Cape Canaveral to Los Angeles. The Disney Host Interactive Teenage Guides will be part of the Disney Dream crew. Finn, Maybeck, Charlene, Willa, and Philby are to attend the cruise as celebrity guests and perform a ribbon cutting for the DHI server to go live. The Dream is now the most advanced cruise ship in the world, but all is not right below decks. Strange things are happening, unexplained phenomena. Only the Kingdom Keepers know the truth behind their invitation. Nearly every Disney villain is represented on board the new ship, whether on its decks or in its theaters. It's believed the Overtakers have infiltrated the cast and are stowaways. Worse, it is believed they have stolen an important journal that once belonged to Walt Disney himself. Finn has been having dreams about this, and some kind of mission is planned.
All right, so we're going to fill in a couple other important plot points before we get to really discussing some of this. So some key things from this book. First off, we start with what the Kingdom Keepers continuously call the battle for the base really sounds like, something pretty epic.
Yeah.
Always reminds me of Battle of the Bulge or something, like
Battle
in
of the
history class,
Bands.
just because like the way it rolls off your tongue like that. But what they're battling for is the servers. So the Overtakers we know from the last two books, made their own holograms, and they're trying to continue to push that technology further. And we see that that's going to lead into bringing that technology onto the cruise ships, not just for our Kingdom Keepers, but also for the villains who have been using the technology as well.
So an important element here is that these characters, the Kingdom Keepers, cross over at night as part of their like Disney interactive technology, and that's how they've been battling. So they'll go to sleep but wake up in one of the parks. So the book 5 opens with Finn, who's our main protagonist, and one of the other Kingdom Keepers, Willa, and they're in an Imagineering library backstage between Epcot and Hollywood Studios, and they find the evil Queen and Cruella in that library trying to steal a journal.
Yeah, and we're not going to hear too much about that journal in this book 5. We're going to talk much more about that in book 6. But this journal is important because it's supposed to contain information about Chernabog. So these Imagineering journals are like all the lore and all of their ideas as they were creating these characters. So the Overtakers, as well as the Kingdom Keepers, want to learn more about Chernabog so they can figure out what kind of villain he is and what his powers will allow him to do if he were to be resurrected. But kind of the fun part, I think for me, one of my favorite parts of the book was was after that in Typhoon Lagoon.
Yeah, so Finn heads there in the evening with his mom, like an attempt to kind of get a little more information on what's going on. So after Typhoon Lagoon closes, he's been invited by Wayne, who, if you're just joining us, is kind of like the guru for the Kingdom Keepers. He's their guide, but he's very mysterious. Like, it kind of comes by way of notes or little clues, but he figures out he has to go to Typhoon Lagoon. His mom drives him there, and after the park closes, he's there in person, and he's in the wave pool there and basically summons King Triton, or King Triton appears and he gets to interact with him. He's like, my understanding from the description was like, he's like huge, like a giant.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the scale you see in The Little Mermaid itself.
That's what I was getting to. And the whole purpose of this Typhoon Lagoon excursion is that Wayne is trying to connect him with Triton so that Finn knows that the Kingdom Keepers have an ally while they're out on the ocean. They're going to be away from a lot of their Disney character friends who have been helping them. So he wants them to know, like, you have some resources and some backup. But of course, Finn always does something a little silly. He doesn't know that you can't say Ursula's name because that summons her. So then we have this thing as he's trying to escape Typhoon Lagoon and get back to his mom. But we find out his mom is put under a spell while he is there.
Yes, in the previous books, some of his friends or classmates have been kind of recruited into the Overtakers army, and the key here is their eye color changes to green. I don't know why, but green is just always affiliated with villains. There's like a meme where it's like, watch out for lime green in a Disney movie. It means something bad.
It's so true.
He notices right away that his mom's eyes are green, and he's like devastated because, as we talked about in our previous episode, his mom has really become an ally for the Kingdom Keepers, and now she's under their spell and trying to harm him. So that's pretty devastating for him. And in the middle of that, he gets in a fight with Amanda, and that's one of his crushes. So they're kind of like, they were never really dating, but it's almost like they broke up, and that's going to play out in this text as well.
Yes. So that whole first third of book 5 is really establishing this tension of them going on this cruise. So transitioning more into the cruise aspect, there's some things we need to know. We have a new DHI version, DHI 2.0, and this comes with some new features. They no longer glow when they're in their hologram form. They look a lot more real, and the keepers are able to transition back and forth between what used to be considered all clear and solid form in their hologram. So they can control when they need to be a hologram and walk through things, or when in their hologram state they need to be able to pick things up. So they're really playing around with this 2.0. And you hear them a lot say gotta love 2.0, as they're getting an edge on some of these, on our villains who are still operating in I think the old one was 1.6 or something. So they have this advantage. But it doesn't come with some of its drawbacks because they know the villains are trying to use this technology as well. And that's what brings us to the cruise ship. They know there is an OT server on the cruise ship. So initially the keepers were going on the cruise anyway because they're introducing the DHI technology on cruise ships. But they have, of course, their motive, which is stop the Overtakers. Their theory, predominantly Philby's theory, is that the Overtakers are using this cruise that is going to go through South America and the Caribbean, through the Panama Canal and up the West Coast so that they can be transported to Disneyland. And that's probably going to be where we're heading towards the final showdown between the Overtakers and the Kingdom Keepers is in Disneyland. So they're trying to make a mobile server. And that's what the rest of this book is about, is trying to stop the Overtakers from launching their new server. And in some ways they're successful, in some ways they're not. We've got many attempts to kill the Kingdom Keepers or sabotage them. There's a lot of pirates. We've seen them before. Some doughboys, those were creepy.
They were.
Doughboys, but also hyenas.
Yeah, that was surprising.
Lion King hyenas.
I don't know
we
how
kind
they
of go into
got
the
on
animal
the ship,
kingdom.
but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how the cast members missed those ones, but hyenas are kind of the new security. Like the overnight, like they lurk around corners and they do the bidding of the Overtakers.
The henchmen.
Yeah. Their classic role in The Lion King for Scar.
Yes.
Now for Maleficent. But we also get some new characters who we're going to talk about in a little bit. So we have Story Ming. She is a new keeper volunteer. Wayne has sent some volunteers on the ship, people that have been helping them in the parks, slowly coming into the Kingdom Keepers cause. But Story Ming is one that Wayne specifically sends to work with the Kingdom Keepers. But she poses some issues. We're going to talk about her in a minute. By the end of this, we have two main things we need to talk about. Chernabog is on the boat. That is going to be the main plot point from the end of Book 5 into Book 6. But then also we have a new villain, Tia Dalma from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
She is a voodoo witch doctor, and she is charged with guarding the server. And what she's brought in for is she has a lot of power at sea, being goddess of the sea. So she has a lot of power for the Overtakers. So that's why they bring her in, and she's going to work some voodoo magic.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets us where we need to get into the discussion. I know some more elements of that will come up, but thank you for helping summarize where we need to go from jumping off. So let's check in with some of our main characters. We've kind of, in each episode talked about their growth. What did you think about what was going on with some of their relationships?
So a big thing that keeps coming up throughout Book 5, but also Book 6, Philby's acting a little weird.
Agreed. Definitely a lot of tension.
Yeah, we had talked in our last episode in Books 3 and 4 that we see this camaraderie building between Philby and Finn, which is great, how they're able to play off each other. And Wayne has told Philby, you're like the navigator, you help point Finn in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But from Finn and almost everyone else's perspective, even Willa, sad. His boo. They're all kind of annoyed with him that he's kind of overstepping. He's becoming too overly confident in the fact that he kind of ignores what everyone else tries to contribute to the group a little bit.
Yeah, so his main, skill set is technology related. So he's really been mastering the 2.0 technology, and he's always the one who's able to hack and control where they go at night. So I think a little bit of that power has gone to his head, but it is necessary. So it's that fine line of wanting to call your friend out because you're you're acting a little weird, but then you don't want to make them mad because they're very important. Also saw a lot of jealousy from Finn.
Yeah.
A little bit of his ego is getting deflated.
A little bit. And we're going to talk more about that. I don't want to give too much away yet. But overall, I think there's just so much tension. One, they're teenagers. I think there's a lot of lack of sleep and a lack of eating involved in this, and then throw in those hormones and trying to, save the world, but also impress your crush at the same time is a lot to ask of a 15-year-old.
Yeah, when you got boy and girl friendships, stuff like that is always gonna play out. So I appreciate that Ridley, I think, has accurately portrayed a friendship as it grows over we're probably 2 years or 3 years into their friendship now at this point.
And they're developing beyond our middle school, oh my God, they're holding hands from books 1 and 2. We're in high school now, and they're heading into sophomore year here. It's the summer after freshman year. So, they're starting to remark a little bit more about how handsome or beautiful different characters look and what features or things they like about each other. So it's kind of interesting to see those developing relationships. So I want to turn that real quick to you, Maybeck and Charlene.
I dig it. So we had talked before in our previous episode about a little love triangle between Finn, Amanda, who's not part of the Kingdom Keepers, but is kind of an honorary member, and Charlene, one of the other main girl Kingdom Keepers. But now she's starting to have feelings for Maybeck, and they're mutual. This came as a bit of a surprise, I think, just how much of that triangle was focused in books 3 and 4.
Yeah. And there are times where she still is crushing on Finn.
Yeah.
But I think she recognizes that she crushes on Finn and she wants his attention, but Maybeck is a little bit more of her match, where they have a lot of similarities with wanting to have adventure, and they're a little bit more like take the leap of faith.
Mm-hmm. Strong-willed.
Yeah. So I think they recognize that they match a little bit better together, even though she's still kind of drawn to Finn. Unfortunately, we don't see much of Amanda.
No, I was kind of bummed about
book.
that. Like,
yeah,
she was able to, so she has the Kingdom Keeper technology because Philby assisted with that in books 3 and 4. So she's able to, quote, cross over, like we explained earlier. So she, like, briefly appears on the ship, but yeah, that kind of felt like we were left hanging there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things go away because we're transitioning onto the ship. But before I talk about the setting, we do need to talk about story.
Yeah, this is a new character, and also speaking about feelings, like I think all of the guys kind of comment on crushing on her at one point. So she is kind of like, would you call her like a spy helping them, or just more, how would you describe her?
Yeah, I guess kind of, because she is a cast member on the cruise ship, but she's been contacted by Wayne. Like, she kind of started talking to them before they knew who she was, so they were kind of taken aback when she finally kind of gets them cornered and is like, Wayne told me to pass this message on to you, and they're like, whoa, you know what we're actually doing. So they're like, she's cute, but then as soon as like that comes out, they're like, oh, she's cute and she can help us. But she's a little mysterious.
Very much so.
I think in book 5, there's a lot more questioning, can we actually trust her or not?
I've noticed trust is like a big theme throughout these books. I feel like anytime a new character comes in, I'm like, ooh, but can you trust them?
Yeah, because you don't know, are they with the Overtakers or not? She doesn't have green eyes, so she's not under a spell, but that doesn't mean that she's trustworthy or that, her role as a cast member is not going to outweigh her helping them. She might, decide that her role is more important and so turn them over to the captain or whoever. But also she's causing conflicts because she's flirting with everybody, and now they're like, wait, Philby and Willa, but Maybeck and Charlene, but Finn and Amanda, but now Story?
Okay, but that was also a little weird to me because
she's older.
Yes, like they're still like 15 and she's like at least 18 to 20, and I was like, I don't know that I'd be doing that if I was an 18 to 20-year-old woman.
Yeah, and I don't know if she's intentionally, like, there were times where she was flirting, but I think that could have been more of, like, trying to gain their trust or trying to, like, complete the mission she's trying to do that was given to her from Wayne. And so we don't see her perspective very much. I think there's, like, one flash that we follow her when she's in the radio control booth, but most of the time we're seeing this through the eyes of Finn, Philby,
so it could
Maybeck.
be their interpretation of how she's treating them.
Right. But I thought it was interesting too. I'm like, because if she's actually a cast member, she has to be at least 18. So, especially on a cruise ship. I think
they described like she's like college age or so. So yes. I took that as 18 or 20.
But she's also going to play a different role. We're going to get to that question in a little bit. But setting, we shifted from Typhoon Lagoon started us off where we stayed within the Walt Disney World Resort, but now we're on a cruise ship. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this surprised me. So I have the physical copies of the book, and the cover for this one, which I've posted on our Instagram, is Typhoon Lagoon, and pretty much each cover has reflected the main, like, setting. So the first one has Magic Kingdom, the second one Animal Kingdom, the third Epcot, then Studios for the fourth. So I was like, oh, Typhoon Lagoon, like, that's cool, we'll get to the water parks. But then it was very quickly, like you said, it's just like the first few chapters, and then they're on the ship, and I was like, oh, okay, we're here. So that was cool, something different. I missed the parks a little bit. What did you think?
Same. I missed the parks. Mostly, it could be I've never been on a Disney cruise, so or cruise ever. So my personal experience, being able to picture what it's like going between multiple decks or being in these different spaces like the teen club, I don't have like a Disney frame of reference, so it's a little harder for me to imagine. And so I kind of lose the nostalgia pull that, like, when they talk about walking down Main Street, I'm like, oh, I love walking down Main Street, and I can see that, and I have a personal experience and tie to it. So these two books, setting wise, were a little hard for me, but I think it's more of a personal level than anything.
Yeah, I've been on the Disney Dream just once. We went on a cruise, not this summer, but last summer. So, like, I kind of knew the areas that they were discussing. And I've been on other Disney cruise ships, the Magic and the Wonder. The only one I haven't gone on is the Fantasy, but they're all pretty similar in their layout. So I could at least picture things. But yeah, just something felt like it was missing to me in terms of this setting, but I completely understand, like, wanting to diversify it. So fun in that regard. But I think, as we'll get to, both books 5 and 6 now primarily take place on this cruise. Certainly there's the ports of call that they visit and they get off the ship, but I guess because we read these two books in tandem for this focus, I was like, okay, like, I'm feeling a little claustrophobic in that regard, in a way.
Yeah, and also because they're out of the parks, we're missing a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
Even though our characters do go on cruises, it seems like we don't have as many interactions with them outside of the villains. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of also missing, because 3 and 4, we finally got, like, Ariel's in the mix and Mulan, and we start to see this, like, build up of the Disney characters coming behind the Kingdom Keepers, and it kind of felt like that was put on pause. They're all still back in Walt Disney World defending the base and keeping Walt Disney World's magic safe from the Overtakers that are still there. So they haven't been with our Kingdom Keepers, and I kind of missed them.
Yeah, understandable. Something we've talked about in the other episodes has been the title of each one. Like, Power Play was a play on words, and book 5 is Shell Game, which is kind of referred to, and it's explained a bit. The shell game is one of those games that's like a sleight of hand. So you'd put, like, a coin under the shell and move the shells around, and then you have to guess which one has the coin. How would you consider this book a shell game?
Well, there's a lot of deceit, and there's a lot of, like you said, that theme of trust. Is that trust misplaced? Is it actually there? And it's about getting ahead of the Overtakers. So there's a lot from the Kingdom Keepers. They figure out that they need to go more on the offensive. So all the times that they have been slighted and deceived by the Overtakers, they're figuring out that they need to have the upper hand. They need to be the ones deceiving the Overtakers and making sure that they can place their trust in one another. But remembering that things are not always what they seem, especially now that the Overtakers have the DHI technology. Are they dealing with a hologram, or are they dealing with the actual Overtaker? So there's a lot of deceit in these two books.
Especially, like, things I've noticed, like, people you think you could trust, like cast members. You know, cast members are always supposed to be there for you in the parks or on the ship, like, for the guests. You know, if you're a lost kid, you know, like, okay, I can go to this person with a name tag. But here, even some cast members are under a spell, so it's like, ooh, like, the usual barriers of trust or signifiers of trust are completely eliminated.
Yeah, even the captain and the head of security, who they call Uncle Bob, they don't necessarily believe everything that's going on. Even though they're seeing it happen with their own eyes, they keep coming up with excuses to tell guests, which I get why they would need to do that for their guests, but they still don't believe the Kingdom Keepers as much as the Keepers are like, we need help. They think that they can trust them, and every time they just keep, you vandalized our ship. And they're like, we didn't do it. It wasn't us.
Look at the recorded video and the security stuff, but they're always like explaining it away.
Yeah. Or conveniently, the camera wasn't working, so it didn't record anything. These poor kids. So yeah, so lots of deceit, and we see that I think play into book 6, even though it goes by a different title. I want to go back for a second. On end of book 4, we know Mickey is missing, and that was like the big
Reveal.
kind of big reveal of book 4 is the parks are missing their leader, so that's why the Kingdom Keepers are here, is to restore that balance and that order. We see Mickey very briefly. He goes running across the Disney Dream, but the captain and Uncle Bob, they're like, wait, Mickey's not scheduled to meet and greet yet. He's supposed to meet guests at this time. What's he doing up here? But Mickey looks panicked, so everyone's kind of confused that, like, it's not a happy Captain Mickey. He's, like, on a mission, but then we don't see him again. This is the only reference we get.
I was so surprised because at the end of last episode, like, you and I were talking about what we're excited for, and I'm like, okay, there's, like, 7 books. It's very clearly outlined. Like, now we're going to get into, like, the meat of things, and I thought that was going to be pivotal, but that's really, like, you see that sighting, it's discussed, like, oh, that was weird. And then that sighting is referenced again, maybe once or twice. Like, oh, yeah, we saw Mickey. And he was behaving weird. What's up with that? But it's not a central plot point this time around. So hopefully we'll get that resolved in book 7, because I know that really piqued both of our interests at the end of book 4.
Yeah, they mention Mickey again in book 6 very briefly. Like when they're talking with the captain and they like run down the list of all the weird things that have been happening, but no one seems to be looking for him. No one's like, hey, where did Captain Mickey go? So I'm curious if Mickey, because we know they're heading towards the West Coast, which is where Disneyland is. So I'm curious if Mickey is like stowing away himself
to get to Disneyland, because they're going to the port of Los Angeles, which is then not too far from Disneyland.
So I wonder if that's something, but so maybe
that's a good theory.
But no one knows why he's gone missing. Like if he was taken or kidnapped. It seems like from book 3 and 4 he was from his house in Toontown, but maybe he escaped the Overtaker captors, so now he's hiding aboard the ship so that he can get to where he needs to be. I don't know. But yeah, I'm very anxious to see more of Mickey, and I was hoping after 3 and 4 we'd see more of him.
Yeah, this took kind of a different path than I expected, like given where we left off.
All right. Moving forward, we, like with the new 2.0 technology, we know Finn, even though he's jealous of Philby knowing a lot about DHI 2.0, Finn has always had an affinity at figuring some other things out or being a little more special, being the quote leader. Finn has a dream like Jess, and it comes true. So like he starts having these dreams about the hyenas on the ship and the server room, which is then the big battle at the end of the book. What do you think about this? Do you think it's a new ability? Do you think it's a coincidence that he's starting to see things?
I think we really see Finn as kind of like, quote, the chosen one. Like, not necessarily like a Harry Potter, but somewhere in that regard. Like, this is about 5 Kingdom Keepers, but it's clear that he's the protagonist. So I guess I'm not necessarily surprised that, like, he's able to take on these new things, because I think that's meant to set him apart. And he has his own self-doubt or jealousy about being the leader, but this really, like, reinforces it for us as the audience that he is special from the others in some way.
I agree. And I don't know if it's necessarily an ability, because I forget if this happens in 5 or 6, but while he's in his hologram form, he gets zapped by electricity.
That's at the end of this one, I think.
Okay. And suddenly now in his DHI form, he's really strong. He's super fast. So like no one really knows like why this new technology is letting them do new things, or how different things with the 2.0 still has some mysteries. So I don't think it's necessarily like a new ability, because he hasn't had any other visions or dreams beyond this one. But I thought that was interesting that he's kind of taking on a Fairly form in some ways, where now he's super strong. He can see some things. He has kind of a sense.
Yeah, I wonder how that'll tie to Amanda and Jess. So as a reminder, if you forgot, the Farrellys are fairly human. We kind of compared them in the first episode to like the X-Men, like they're teens with special abilities. So their two friends are referred to as, quote, sisters, but it's just that they both ran away from like this home in Baltimore for these special kids. I've always kind of, okay, side note, Emily and I are from Maryland, so the Baltimore connection, every time I see it, I'm like, okay, but I wonder why it's Baltimore. Like, ooh.
I guess because it's close enough to DC.
That's fair. Like, it's
without being in DC.
Right. Like, it's far enough away that they're like, okay, we can, like, study them. Because it's definitely referenced that the military has an interest in their abilities. That makes sense. Like, just the geography. Yeah.
Maryland has a lot of military that I don't think people recognize is here just because of the proximity to DC. There's so much in Maryland that no one really thinks about. Like, apparently, I live really close to Camp David. Even though Surprise. I have no idea where it is, I live in the mountain range that Camp David's in. So I'm, like, looking around all the time, like, is that a thing? Are they driving somewhere? Why are there's mysterious giant trucks out of nowhere?
So, yes, the Farrellys have special abilities. I wonder if they'll start to, like, consider him a Farrelly as well. Like, if we'll see more of that develop between them within their friendship. I want to go back to, you had mentioned the 2.0 technologies. That's a big part. It's introduced in these books and like really central to their action. But now there starts to be some speculation, again, going back to that theme of trust regarding 2.0. They kind of start to suspect that 2.0 is in beta, which means it's being tested. And, you know, they're the only Disney host interactive people, so they're the testers, whether they like it or not. But the idea is floated that could they be being tested for future Disney host interactives? Like, essentially, are they being prepared to be replaced?
Yeah, so Philby poses that question towards the end of the book and like just kind of throws it out there. And it's kind of like a smack in the face. Even to me as a reader, I was like, whoa, where did that come from?
It made sense to me, though, because this was kind of at the back of my mind. There's the whole thing of kind of like integrity with the hosts. So as a reminder, the kids were hired to be tour guides in the parks, but they're holograms and guests can interact with them. But for that reason, like, they can't be in the park at the same time without permission, which they obviously break a lot. Yes. The thing is, they recorded these as middle schoolers, so I looked a lot different at like 12 or 13 than I did at 15 or 16. So I was kind of like, I guess they're still using those original recordings. So it's like, does it really matter if they're in the parks? Like, he might just look like his older brother. I mean, he doesn't have a brother. He has a sister, which we still don't know anything about. But, like, you know, like, would they be as recognizable in that regard? So it makes sense to me that they're like, oh, like, are we aging out? And it's kind of floated that maybe some of these people who have been brought on to help them, like Story Ming or other people, like, they're more college.
Kenny Carlson, yes. I think is another one. Kenny.
Kenny, they're a little bit older. So is it more like, ooh, we made a mistake of hiring middle schoolers to do this because they age out too quickly? But maybe if we put these people in their young 20s, that's a little more evergreen in a way.
Yeah, and that's where real conflicts with Story come in. The beginning of the book, it's a lot about just, you know, she's pretty and how do we feel about her as we're trying to, you know, work through young adult relationships. But when that comes out, Story starts letting things slip a little bit that, you know, the future of DHI and that she's been talking to Wayne. So now Finn's really suspicious of her. And that's when they kind of connect that she might be one of these new ones. And every time they try to ask her that, like, are you going to be the next generation DHI hosts, she always skirts around it. So that's a lot of the tension too of, can we trust her or not because she's necessarily a overtaker, but she put me out of a job, something that these kids have taken to heart over, I guess this is about year 3-ish.
Yeah, the timeline's a little unclear.
Reference like the last 2 years, so they're somewhere in like year 3 of being a DHI. that they're like, we've kind of taken this to heart and made it our own. It's kind of sad to lose that part of you.
Yeah, is that why you think this idea maybe disturbs Finn so greatly? Like, he seems to be very affected by the idea of, like, losing this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from Wayne, because Wayne has told him, you're the leader. So the idea of, well, how do you replace the leader? You just kick him out? So that's kind of, I think that's what's hurting him, is for once he sees a higher purpose for himself. And so the last 2-3 years now, he's been building towards, like, this is my purpose. This is what I do.
This is my identity. I mean, like,
yeah,
they're basically celebrities among, the population within the book. Like, fans clamor through them. But what I found interesting, I'm not sure if this was referenced in book 5 or 6, but because they both take place on the cruise, they're running a little bit together, but it's not essential to the plot. But in terms to, I guess, the reaction to that, not everybody's having the same reaction. Willa is kind of like, maybe I wouldn't mind if this is no longer my life. Like, she seems a little bit tired of some of the elements. So I thought it was great to have, like, diverse reactions to that potential threat.
Yeah, I think Finn, Philby, and Charlene are more, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. But Maybach, I feel like, is in the middle. He has moments where he's like, I'd be sad to lose the spotlight, but I would like to not try to be killed every 2 days. And then Will is I just would like to be a teenager again. And we can still be friends. We still have us. It doesn't change that much. All it changes is no one's going to be trying to kill us.
Yeah. If this transition were to occur, what problems do you think might arise?
Probably a lot of, I think for Philby, I feel like it's going to be different for each character. So, like, for Philby, I think he will lose a little bit of his identity of being in the dark on the technology. But I could also see Wayne saying, like, you're now a, quote, Imagineer type. Like, you don't cross over, you don't do this, but you work behind the scenes because he's really good at the tech. But then I could see how that would affect Finn, because we're already seeing from the last book that Wayne's been talking to Philby more, and Finn's like, what am I?
Yeah, chop
So
over.
if Philby or something is to be kept on as a new guru, per se, or controller of the DHI server, I don't know where that leaves Finn. Does he become like the new Wayne?
And I don't know if this question is not answered in books 5 or 6. Like, we don't know for sure if they're being replaced, so I'm not even sure if it's something we'll get to in book 7. But I could see maybe, like, okay, we have the next generation, but then, as always, something goes wrong, so then they do accidentally cross over. It's like, oh, we've been out of this for a few years, but oops, we're the ones who are now back in the
We do know there is another series that comes after, so who knows? But I think the transition would affect Philby and Finn the most.
Yeah.
I think Charlene and Maybach, would be disappointed.
They'd miss it, but then
they'd miss the adventure.
Ultimately, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think identity-wise, Charlene and Maybach are stronger independently at knowing who they are. I think this adventure as a Kingdom Keeper fits their identity, isn't their identity. They enjoy adventure, they enjoy problem solving, so the Kingdom Keeper realm lets them do that, whereas, like, Finn and Philby found their identity because of being a Kingdom Keeper more. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense, because, this comes to them at such a pivotal time in their adolescence. Like, as middle schoolers, like, it makes them cool in a way. So a lot of their identity is very much tied to this experience and this recognition.
Yeah, and, like, Philby and Finn were not, quote, cool, whereas Charlene and Maybach are on their own, even without... They're more cool because of Kingdom Keepers, but they were already popular in school, and...
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight into, like, their personalities.
Willa will just be happy.
She's just content. I like Willa. She's so chill. Too. I think we see a lot of ourselves in her.
We see a lot more insecurities from her in this.
We do.
She's a little more afraid, but I think that's because we really see the stakes getting higher. And that kind of brings us into our ending, because we're going to talk about these high stakes and some transitions to more darker sides of Kingdom Keepers really in the next book. But I think that's where we see a lot more vulnerability from Willa as well. So yeah, she'd be happy to put this behind her. But let's talk about the ending. So we find out Chernobog is on the ship. What do you think about that? Getting him on a cruise ship.
This was really interesting to me because, as we've seen in some of the other books, like he's been alluded to, there's a brief encounter with him at the end of book 2. Like, Chernobog is massive. If you are not familiar with Chernobog, he's a little more of an obscure Disney villain, and he is kind of like the Lord of the Underworld, represented in the Knight of Bald Mountain segment in Fantasia. So they're trying to get him on the ship, but it's hard to get something that big on a ship, like, with that much security.
Yeah, he's part of a mountain.
Yeah. So
mountains are big.
In a pivotal scene that takes place on Castaway Cay, Disney's private island, they're usually, you leave, if you've been on a cruise, you leave Castaway Cay maybe around like 5 or so. Like, I feel like you have to be back on the ship by 4. And they pull away to continue on sailing. You're not there overnight, but in this case, they're like, just kidding, we're staying, which probably has to do with the Overtakers manipulating someone. So there's a fireworks display and a beach party for the passengers, but that's really used as a ruse and a disguise to distract from a plane landing on the island. Fun fact for you, Emily, the island was owned by the Bahamian government and it's leased to Disney, but it did have a landing strip on it before Disney purchased it. So this was used as like a stop within the islands, and there is like literally a runway on there. So that plane where they land the plane, that already existed. Disney's incorporated it kind of into like the theming of the island. It leads to the adults only beach area, and if you do the Castaway Cay 5K, 3.1 mile run, you get to run on that runway for a little bit.
Cool.
And there's like a plane which 2 of the characters hide out in to observe. So I just thought that was cool that he incorporated like that actual part of the island into it. No surprise, given all of his backstage references and all. So yeah, the plane lands on the island, and essentially like Chernobog's put to sleep and smuggled in on this very big box. So I guess they flew him from Florida, where we last saw him, and then got him on the ship.
Yeah, so like the last, I would say maybe 5th of the book, it's not a huge piece, but the big ending is the kids know he's on the ship and we got to find him. Like, where are they keeping him? And they find him in the box. He's backstage in the theater because the theater is so large and has lots of places to put things, and a big crate would not look out of place backstage in a theater. But they do see he's asleep, and the Overtakers, though, find out that they know that Chernobog's on the ship, so then they move Chernobog. So now we're like, where is he? So that's what brings us into book 5. But as they're trying to figure out where he is, they know that they need to shut down the server, and that's where Tia Dalma is guarding the server on the ship, and they find out where that is.
With her voodoo magic.
Yes. So most of the book is them trying to find this server, and at the end we finally find it. It's, oh goodness, where is it? They go through lots of places.
It's hard to pinpoint because it's definitely in like a backstage area, and that is not something I'm familiar with on the ship. But I don't like almost like a boiler room.
Yeah, because they thought it was going to be in the refrigerators, so they spend a lot of the book trying to get into the refrigerators and near the air conditioning systems. But then they realize that if Maleficent's not guarding it, it doesn't need to be somewhere cold.
Because she's
for Maleficent's
the only
purposes.
one who needs to be cold. Yeah, so it's
right,
the
so
boiler room. We'll call it the boiler room. But that function on the ship. It is backstage, off limits. And I think we just need to circle back to the beginning about those journals that I talked about. The journal that was stolen, Wayne realizes, is like an Imagineer's, or an artist who became an Imagineer's journal regarding Fantasia, so kind of like directions for handling Chernobog in a way, so that they know that the journal is important, Chernobog's important, and it's got something to do with their power struggle. So they go to confront Tia towards the end of this book.
Yes, and they know they can shut down the server if they get this flash drive, which Finn does. They get inflicted with a little bit of pain along the way. That's when he gets electrocuted, but that somehow gives him some enhanced powers that he's able to get out of the server room. And that's what his whole vision was him going to the server room and then they are confronted by the hyenas, which they had seen before
That was
on the ship
Finn's
patrolling.
vision, too, was like this moment with the hyenas and Willa.
Right. But he couldn't get it right. Kind of also like Jess, where you don't know when it's going to happen because they saw the hyenas before. So he kept thinking, he's like, oh, this is my vision, but it wasn't. And then it finally comes to pass that he and Willa kind of get cornered. So the cliffhanger ending is he has the thumb drive. He throws it onto the ship while he and Willa jump off of a cruise ship.
Into the ocean. I was
Into
like,
dark water. This is not
what?
daytime. This is nighttime. So even scarier, this is dark water. And that's just how it ends. It was his best cliffhanger yet, I think.
I would agree, because the cliffhangers before were more like, oh, they pressed a button, but like we know they're returning home. And in a sense, the way that the books pick up, it's like a few months have passed between books 3 and 4 and books 4 and 5. Maybe a few weeks, but like it's not that immediate, like dun dun dun, and like leaving you hanging. We were very fortunate that, you know, like for me, I have all 7 books, so I finished book 5 and literally just picked up book 6, but there was a year between the publication of these 2 books. So do you want to take us into book 6?
Yeah, let's transition. And I think this is where you and I are going to spend a lot of our time. Even though we talked a lot about book 5 just now, 6 is where a lot of stuff goes down.
Book 5 really is just like the impetus to get us there.
Yes, and to get us familiar with the cruise ship, a lot of the layout and stuff, because book 6 moves pretty quickly. So here's a little bit from about the book. The 5 Kingdom Keepers and their core friends have uncovered a startling truth. Maleficent and the Overtakers, Disney villains, are plotting a catastrophic event that could have repercussions far beyond the world of Disney. Aboard the Disney Cruise Line's inaugural passage through the new Panama Canal, the Keepers and their holograms uncover a puzzle hidden within the pages of a stolen journal. The point of the puzzle will reveal itself in the caves of Aruba, the zip lines of Costa Rica, and the jungles of Mexico. A destructive force dormant for decades is about to be unleashed. The 5 Kingdom Keepers are to be its first victims.
Yeah, so I'll pick us right back where we left off just 2 minutes ago. Willa and Finn are in the water. The ship is sailing away quite fast in the middle of the night, you know, kind of becoming a blip on the horizon. But we had that important moment at the opening of book 5 with King Triton, where King Triton said, you know, if you ever need my assistance, just whisper this code into the ocean and I'll come and help you. So that's what he does. A sub appears and, you know, brings them back to the ship with some dolphins, and they're like riding on the dolphins. That was a fun scene.
I wanted to ask you about that. We didn't have a lot of throwbacks in these 2 books to like extinct attractions or anything, because the dream is still
very
the
new.
Dream.
Yeah.
But we had a throwback here, the Nautilus.
Yeah, not
Captain
mentioned
Nemo.
by name, but alluded to with Nemo. Not really referenced in its description.
Finn thinks it is, though. We don't see it, but he's like, is that Captain Nemo? Is that the Nautilus?
Do you want another
Thanks, Triton.
fun fact, Emily?
Sure, I
This
love
would
your
have been
fun
a
facts.
fun tie-in. I don't think it's presently still there, but I could be wrong. But there was a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea attraction at Walt Disney World. So there's our defunct attraction.
There we go.
You rode in vehicles that were shaped like the Nautilus from that famous Disney film. And when that ride closed, like the subs were taken, but Disney likes to recycle things. They took one of the former attraction vehicles when they built rejudged Castaway Cay, because they didn't build an island, but they developed it a little bit. They took the Nautilus ride vehicle and they sunk it in the snorkeling area. So you used to be able to
Really?
snorkel out there. I saw it in 2010 when we did one aboard the Disney Wonder, but when Doug and I went on the Disney Dream this past summer, we didn't do snorkeling, so I didn't get to go out and see if it's still there. But yeah, it's cool. So I was like, oh, that'd be cool if it was like the one that was underwater at Castaway Cay, like came and saved them.
That's so funny. I didn't know that. That's so cool. And I was just laughing because that book is on our list for this year, is to read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So we might have to come back to it. We'll learn more about Captain Nemo. But there's our defunct attraction, because we don't have that many in these 2 books.
No, it's all
since
the
we're away
cruise.
from the parks.
Yep.
So from there, we have a lot of back and forth. The bulk of the book is I would say maybe that first third is them getting back on the ship, and then they're trying to get back that flash drive because they don't know who has it. So back and forth with the hyenas, they have the journal. They were able to steal the journal, so they're trying to keep the journal away from the Overtakers, who are trying to still catch them in the syndrome. So a lot of the same things we've seen in the other books, just in a new setting. But we do also know that the OTKs, the Overtaker kids,
The ones under the spell.
who are under the spell, are on here, trying to avoid them. I'm going to come back to that in a second, because we are still looking for where Charnabog's being kept, and we're sneaking around the ship to avoid cast members, etc. But what I find interesting in this book is we start to see a shift in these OTKs, these kids that, were promised power and prestige. They're starting to turn a little bit.
Yeah, the biggest villain, I think really the only one who's a kid whose name we get throughout, is Greg. It's Lukowski, right?
I think so. That's how
I'd say it. He's encountered in some of the early books just as like a bully at Finn's school who like picks on him and Amanda, but then becomes recruited into this little legion of Overtaker kid army and under the spell. But they're essentially the henchmen as well, being asked to carry out tasks for the Overtakers. But he's asked to do something that's really against his moral fiber, and like you get inside his head a little and see that like, ooh, maybe I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah, overall, these books are getting a little darker.
More adult, for sure.
Yeah, like Greg, for instance, has to hurt one of the hyenas to get
not
the
hurt.
server back.
He murders the hyena.
Okay, I didn't know how far
and
we
it
went to go
is
here. He murders the hyena.
Somewhat graphic for, I guess, more than I'd expect in a Disney book.
And that's our first encounter that Finn and Philby have with him in this book is Greg. They find the hyena dead and this gash in its stomach because hyena ate the server flash drive, and they're trying to talk Greg out of it, and they can see that Greg is really disturbed by this. So they try to get in his head, like, you don't like doing this. We want to help you. Like, I know we don't get along, but, like, we can team up on this.
He drops a bombshell and says, one of you is going to die.
Yeah, so Greg, we know he's scared that he can't let a lot more loose because they're trying to talk more out of him. They're like, what do you mean? What's going on? And he's like, no, if I say any more, she is going to kill me.
Meaning Maleficent or the evil queen or one of the villainesses.
So Greg is now really scared. He felt pretty confident when Maleficent was like, I have a special task for you. He's like, yeah, I'm your guy. And then it was go kill this hyena and, capture one of the Kingdom Keepers
And pretty much insinuating he might have to kill one of the Kingdom Keepers because he says one of you is going to die. And that's really the crux of this one is, I don't want to die.
Yes, we finally crossed into that. So we start to see Greg he kind of hears Finn and Philby a little bit and starts taking back. He's like, I don't want to be friends with them and I don't want to say I need your help, but he like starts to slowly inch away from the OTs. And we see that, I think, also from some of the other kids. There's only one or two that are like full on zombie mode. But pretty much the OTKs or the OTs are losing a little bit of their army. A little bit.
And as their foil, we have some new friends as well. So we have another fairy, Maddie, who has empathizer powers. Basically, if she touches someone, she gets like a glimpse into their thoughts, which I'm pretty sure is the plot of an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
It reminded me of Twilight.
Oh, I never read Twilight.
Okay, so Edward Cullen's daughter, the way he can read minds, she can touch anyone and see their thoughts and like their past and flashbacks. So it kind of reminded me of that.
I'm thinking of Unbreakable. That's the one with Bruce Willis. And very similar, like if he just like brushes up against someone, he like sees them in the future but can see if like they're going to do something bad. So while she's not seeing into the future, she's able to like glean from them things that have happened or like what they're planning to do.
Yeah, so there's always stuff going on in your mind that even if you're not currently thinking about whatever, that anxiety or those fears or that happiness is still there. So she can pick up on whatever you're feeling currently. And she's interesting because she kind of is, she's in,
She's very
she's
mysterious.
not in book 5, right?
She's alluded to a little bit because the distinct feature of her is dark black or brown hair with like red streaked tips. And I don't know if you remember, some of these people are stowed away like in unsold cabins.
Mm-hmm.
And they like, Philby finds hair and it's described like that. So I think it was like a little bit of foreshadowing, but like they don't get introduced to her until this book. But she's kind of referenced as like this mysterious girl with black hair with red tips.
Yeah, so kind of like story, we don't know if we can trust her. We know we can because we, as the reader, know that
interaction with Amanda.
Yeah, we know she's a friend of Amanda's, and she also escaped from the facility in Baltimore. But Finn, Philby, they start seeing this girl like out of the corner of their eye, and she's dropping notes for them. But then once she finally confronts them, because she has enough info that she's like, I need to tell you something right now. She's like, oh yeah, I'm a friend of Amanda. And that kind of throws Finn off a little bit because he hasn't heard or seen Amanda in a while. That he's, oh no, this connection. So let's talk about that first third of the book. These new friends.
Also, I feel like we need to mention another new friend, and that's Dillard. So in the very first book, that's basically like Finn, you know, we said he's like not the coolest kid. Like that's just his buddy, like his uncool friend as well, like kind of described as being like a little overweight, like just his sidekick in middle school. But as Finn becomes a Kingdom Keeper, we see their friendship grow apart a little. Like Dillard's left in the dust, but he really wants to be included. He's like, I want to be a Kingdom Keeper. And now's his chance. You know, he's unbeknownst to Finn, and Finn sees him. He kind of has been stepping in to assist Finn, like when the pirates were confronting him in book 5, like almost referred to as Finn's guardian angel in a way.
Yeah, he kind of, I don't know how I forgot Dillard for a second. He's such a big part of this book.
Towards the end, which we'll get to.
Right. Like you said, like Finn kind of keeps seeing him or hearing his voice, but then like every time he turns around, he's gone. But finally figured out that Dillard was sent here by Wayne. Wayne thought they needed some more backup, so all of the stowaways that the Kingdom Keepers thought of to be OTKs are actually some of their own friends as well. Like Maddie and Dillard and Kenny, who are stowaways, are actually on their side. So let's talk about this first third of the book, these plot points we just brought up. We continue to see some power struggles.
Yeah.
Did you see it grow more from book 5? Do you think it's more intense, less?
Honestly, these books felt very similar to me. Mm-hmm. It was repetitive in a way. It really felt like some of the same plot points just continuing to play out. Like, I don't know that we really resolved Finn's jealousy of Philby all that much. Like, it continued to repeat a bit in my eyes.
Yeah, I think, like you said, this has to do with the timeline of these two books, that they do immediately happen one after the other within the same week, whereas all the other books, they're kind of their own little mini episode, then you take a break and pick it back up. But I think it boils over a little bit more because Finn does finally confront Philby. They have a moment where they're planning together, and we find out why Finn is acting weird is because Wayne told Philby not to tell Finn things. And that kind of hurts Finn.
Oh, absolutely.
But Philby fires back, like, what would you do if Wayne told you not to tell us something? So, like, you see the jealousy from Finn throughout this book, but a little bit of, like, he tempers himself because he trusts Wayne so completely that he's like, ugh, but I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. So we kind of finally have that climax.
And in terms of the power struggle, this was kind of something you mentioned, I think in the last episode. We have 2 female Kingdom Keepers, Charlene and Willa. And, you know, in some ways, the boys are protective of them. They're like, you know, we'll go with you. Or like, we can do that. I saw even more of them, the 2 girls, stepping up and taking an active role. And essentially at one point, I think one of them, I forget who says it, is like, wait, why do the guys always give us directions?
Charlene did.
Yeah.
Charlene
like, she's like,
it.
have you ever noticed how, like, we never get to suggest anything? So some other shifts in power struggles there as well.
Yeah, and the girls get their own mission.
They do. That was nice.
They finally get a female mission because Maybeck got trapped, not in the syndrome, but was he trapped in the syndrome?
He's in a coma because he got, like, hit by lightning, but it's kind of
But it's not
in
the syndrome,
yeah.
but it is.
Because they're able to bring him into his crossed over hologram state, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like a reverse syndrome. He got trapped in his human body, so they needed to go find him.
Yes, that's a
his
good way to
hologram
put
to
it.
talk him back into waking up in his human body. So that was interesting. But so like he's kind of down and out on some big missions just because he's still recovering. They know the OTs are after Finn, so like Finn, you can't go walk into a trap. And Philby's like, I gotta work the server. So it kind of left all the girls, and Charlene was like, yes. But she also kind of feels what it's like to be the leader, because they're like, Charlene, this is on you.
Yeah.
Like, you planned this out, and she takes the lead, and she finally figures out what it feels like to be Finn. So I think this book, we see the climax of those tensions in the first like 2/3, and finally they kind of, even though they're still a little tense around each other, I think they empathize with each other a little bit more, which we see with Maddie. The empathy, I think, comes through in multiple forms in this book.
Yeah, what
did
did
they step into each other's shoes.
Think of Maddie? I know we've talked about Dillard in the past, and we've talked about Story, but what did you think of her character?
I like her. I think she kind of got in over her head. She seemed a lot more confident in herself in the first part of the book.
I could see that.
But then as soon as she went on this mission with the girls, and we mentioned this book's getting a little darker, like they see that there's actual threats out here. She's like, wait a minute, you guys do this? Like, why? And Amanda kind of has to like talk her down numerous times. Like, you need to stop panicking. You're giving away our position. You're going to be okay. We have you. We're with you. So that was a little hard for her.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think, another theme of like friendship, kind of seeing the relationship between her and Amanda. And like Amanda considers Jess her sister, and she's kind of offering that to Maddie. Like, you know, we're here for you. We stick together. We have each other's back.
Yeah, I think there's still that tension of them being replaced, though. Like, that has yet to go away, because it gets revealed from what Philby knows from Wayne is that kind of like the Fairleys, how the military is interested in the Fairleys. Now the militaries are interested in this Disney technology, because if you have holograms that can operate as people but not get hurt, that's a great technology to have in a military.
Absolutely.
So now Philby, we find out he's acting weird, but also there's kind of this tension with himself where he's struggling with, he knows how to work this, but he doesn't want to have it weaponized in a way. It's interesting, but I think that's a plot point. They touch on it super briefly, and it's kind of used as a way to like get Finn to shut up and like realize this has nothing to do with you. Philby's just under stress from Wayne about this is going to be bigger than just Disney World. But I think it's going to come back up.
Absolutely. Something else interesting here is we get off the ship a little more. Again, not into like a Disney space, but they're in Aruba, they're in Mexico as like different ports of call. So that leads to some of these missions, and really going back to book 5's kind of reveal of they need the journal, they need Tiadama, they need Chernabog. There's going to be some kind of ceremony and black magic here, like to, I guess, awaken Chernabog to perform some kind of powerful ritual.
Yeah, and we get the puzzles back. I feel like book 5 didn't have a lot of puzzles.
That's fair.
And this one we finally get Ridley Pearson's suspenseful, the puzzles, figuring things out back. And because the kids have been deciphering the journal, and in the journal we find out there is a, quote, 3-step process to resurrect Chernabog. Willa kind of gets her stance here. She gets to show her leadership in this, that she knows a little bit about bats and how bats work. She knows a little bit about
mythology and stuff too. Definitely, she's getting her History Channel side in.
Yeah, she throws in there. She's like, "What? You guys don't watch the History Channel?" But I'm like, "Well, you do a little more than watch the History Channel." But I'm proud of her. I miss old school History Channel where you actually learned history from the History Channel. But anyway, she lets loose that, Chernabog, he's asleep because it's like a hibernating state. I think it's called torpor.
Yeah.
Excuse my pronunciation. That bats do. It's kind of like a form of hibernating, but also hummingbirds do it as a way to sustain life with as little energy as possible. So it's like a hibernating state. And they figure out the journal is the villains trying to figure out how do we wake up Chernabog and return to full strength. And there's lots of different glyphs and symbols, and Maybeck gets to use his artistry a little bit because he's able to use his perspective to like figure out which way the glyphs are supposed to face, and how they piece together. And they figure out that Tia Dalma is being brought in because she's the person that needs to perform the ceremony. They need a witch doctor. They need someone more connected to nature elements to do this. Then there's something about a yellow flower in Aruba. I wasn't quite understanding that. Did you take more away?
I really didn't understand its significance either. I think it was some kind of ingredient related to the ceremony, but it almost felt like a decoy because what they thought from one of Jess's visions was a cave, like, wasn't necessarily the confrontation that they expected.
Right, but the cab driver and like the locals made this big deal that these kids kept talking about this golden flower they saw, and they're like, it only blooms, at an eclipse and all this other stuff. So it sounded like a big deal, but then the flower didn't come back up after that.
No,
so I was a little
eclipse
lost.
did. So I guess it just tied into the ingredients or whatever that was needed. But that's a good point. Like, I kind of forgot that they're like the cab driver like freaked out about it, and then it's like, and it never got mentioned again.
Yeah, but
like Finn's sister.
You and the siblings. It's like your rant with
know.
Chip and his siblings.
It's like the mystery girl in Carousel of Progress in the first act who's there and then never comes back, except she.
You just have a thing
there.
with mysterious siblings.
Well, if they're
Carousel of Progress,
I just
Chip
need
and his
answers.
brothers and sisters.
Yes, and Beauty and the Beast. I just need answers.
That's the side stories we want to see.
I do. That's going to be my fan fiction.
But anyway, so step 3 is they need to do a human sacrifice, like old school ancient Mayans, Aztecs, like what you would think of, I guess, to the god of Chernobog so that he can return to power. And that's what Jess's vision is these different tunnels that lead into that temple. So we finally, Jess's vision that they've had for 2 books now that they couldn't figure out what it is, we finally figure it out. So they find this temple in Mexico. So we're going through the Mexico jungles, and the ritual has to take place during a solar eclipse, which has some great symbolism. The god of darkness, the devil himself coming back when there's no light.
This is our climax.
Yeah, and this took a big part of the book.
Yeah. And a big turn.
Well, but it also took a big chunk of the book. It was like the last full fourth of the book is taking place in the jungles of Mexico. It took a bit to get here, but then we stayed there for a while, and it was cool because I felt like we got a lot. So take us through the tunnels.
Crazy. So we forgot to give our spoiler warning, but we were going into book 6, so hopefully you're on board here. Sorry, we got a little caught up on that cliffhanger. They are in the jungle, and in one of the earlier jungle excursions, because when you go on a cruise, you can do different activities in port. Charlene and Willa notice that something looks off about Philby and Finn, and it turns out it's Kenny and Dillard in disguise. So they're going on this zip line activity, but then Dillard, who the Overtakers think is Finn because they've used prosthetics and stuff from the costuming department backstage at the theater, Dillard's gone missing, and they know that he's in the Overtakers' possession. So it really becomes like a rescue mission to find Dillard. First, they think he's off the ship, so they go into the jungle overnight, but then they realize, oh no, he was put in a bag and brought back on the ship, and that leads us to the jungle and the temple, where Dillard is about to be sacrificed. So things get real dark real fast.
And Finn, trying to be a good friend, he tries to, take me instead of him. I'm the one you actually want. And usually I feel like that works in the movies because, villains are vindictive. They want to finish it with finish the person.
Finn. Maleficent clearly has a beef with Finn throughout the
But
books.
Tia Dalma, she's like, blood is blood. I don't care who it is. And you're just oh my God. I thought the ploy would work, but it doesn't. But Finn, with his new, superpower strength and whatever, the girls create some diversions to distract Maleficent and the Queen. Chernobog is half asleep, so he's not really registering what's going on right now. And Philby and Maybeck are knocked out by a spell. So it's Finn and the girls, and the girls create a good enough distraction that he single-handedly is fighting Tiadama and Chernabog.
So, isn't that hard to talk about? This was also, I had to like reread this page. I was like, wait, what? Basically, Dillard's on the sacrificial table, and he like goes to stab Tiadama because he got the knife away from her. But then when he stabs Tiadama, it turns out Tiadama disguised herself as Dillard and disguised Dillard as Tiadama. So Finn murdered his best friend. And I
also had to reread that twice.
What?
What? Yeah. Crazy.
So my interpretation
crazy
was like she switched their bodies because she knew like he was going to try to save Dillard and kill her. So she's like, JK, I'm Dillard and you just killed your friend.
What was crazy is because I went back and reread it too. I was like, when did it happen though? I guess while he was like because Chernabog kind of like stumbles into things. Chernabog's not smart.
Yeah, like he's just a big
he's like
fish.
Beast.
Yeah.
He's just like, there's a thing in front of me, must smash.
Like Hulk.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Hulk that like he just one-track minded, something's in front of me, hit it. So maybe while he was focused on Chernabog for like a hot second, she does this switch or something. Like, I don't know, because I was like, when did she do this body switch that Finn didn't see this happen?
Weren't supposed to know, and they like she knew he was gonna come for him, so it could have been before they arrived. But yes, I was confused, and then like I thought Dillard was dead like twice, but then like he actually, so it was kind of like he kept being referred to as like lifeless. It's like, okay, but is he dead? And then eventually it was finally like, and the life slipped from his body, and I was like, ooh, he's dead, because they do take his body away, and like it's like one of those best friend moments where it's like, hang on, buddy.
Stay with me,
yes.
And Dillard, like a champ, is like, he feels like he did what he was supposed to do. Dillard's always wanted to be a keeper. Dillard, I think, was more leap of faith than any of them.
This is like the Cedric Diggory moment of book 4 of Harry Potter.
Where he like has no resentment. He's just very at peace with it. And just like, it was heartbreaking.
It was. I was like, oh man.
I was also concerned about Finn as a character for a second, because even before he realized Dillard was Tiadama, that switch, he was still like, I'm going to kill her. This is a 15-year-old, like being able to be in that place where you're like, I am willing to kill someone. Even if it's a Disney villain, like that's a big character turn, because it feels like so far they've bought into the idea, or they respect the idea of like, this is Disney, like people get hurt, but you don't cross a line.
Yeah, let's talk about that being like a little more gruesome. So like we have the hyena killing, this kidnapping, the human sacrifice, Dillard dying. Like, did this work for you? Did it shock you? Like, what was your take?
There's a lot of emotions about this.
Yeah.
So it worked for me in a literary sense that it was a punch moment where you're just like, whoa, what happened? So literary-wise, plot-wise, I think it worked.
Maybe not like a full Game of Thrones, like, oh, you killed off the main character, but definitely not expected.
But like, there's a shift in the morality that, and like we see this even in Disney, that maybe it's the Disney movies you and I particularly grew up with, like, most of the things we study and read is that everyone credits that Walt wasn't afraid to be dark. But then somehow, you know, in the Disney Renaissance, like, yes, the parents tend to die. Like, the trauma of the 90s, Mufasa. I know. But we don't see anymore that the heroes necessarily kill people.
Right. It's
villains
very much,
die at their own hand.
They fall to their deaths. Like, their life isn't fully, like, taken by the protagonist.
So now in Disney movies, or through most Disney movies, the protagonist is not the person who ends the villain. And I think that's something we respect, that, you know, evil gets its own comeuppance in a way. It's up to the hero to stand up to them, but that's all you need to do is stand up to it, and the rest will fall into place. But we actually see, kind of against the Disney grain a little bit, that Finn is like, no, I am going to be the one to end this. And that was intense. So, like, I don't know how to reconcile that with the Disney idea, versus like the Disney theme, or
Yeah, for me, this dark turn was definitely surprising, but I didn't fully mind it. You know, like I think this book is growing up with its fans in a way. We talked about how in the first episode I read it as a 13-year-old, so I was the same age as the characters. I didn't read the rest of them until we've embarked on this series, but I would have been like growing up with these characters at this point at the rate that the books are introduced. So I think Ridley is cognizant of that. Like, his fan base has been growing with these, and he's going to get into some darker territory. So I liked what you said about Walt. Like, Walt wasn't afraid to shy away from some of these things. So I think in a sense it kind of harkens back to that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know,
especially with Chernabog as a villain from Fantasia, like that is a very dark and scary sequence.
Yeah, it is very dark and scary. And I see again those parallels. I know we keep saying I don't want to compare this to Harry Potter, but I see so many parallels. Where like in the Harry Potter series, it's book 5 and 6 where we see that transition in the characters with the angst and hitting the wall when they realize they have to maybe get a little more involved than they ever thought they had to, and assume roles that 15-year-olds never should. So I'm starting to see a lot of that, but also that idea, like Harry Potter, it's a series that grew up with its readers. That made me think of it from what you said, because we see those themes, I think, in most series. Somewhere after your middle, you mature. Somewhere your readers are willing to go there with you. But I thought that was interesting. And it's really sad because Dillard follows them.
Yeah.
They have to carry him back to the ship.
Right, so it doesn't just end with, like, Dillard dying. Now he kind of has to escape. Like, Chernabog's awake. He's tasted a bit of blood, and he quite literally wants more. So they run into this Mayan temple, and Finn's trying to evade Chernabog. Willa has the great idea of using a spider's silk, because it's supposed to be like a labyrinth of sorts, to make sure Finn can find his way back out. So it seemed like Chernabog gets like stuck in the water, and then Maleficent and the evil queen are kind of lost within there as well, but they make it back to the ship. But I don't think this is the last that we'll see of Maleficent and Chernabog. There was a cool scene with Maleficent where she like tries to turn into a dragon, but then realizes like the temple is too small, so that hurts her. And talking about death again, Finn like goes to hurt her, goes into his like hologram all clear state, but then because of his fear turns human. So essentially he like wounds her by like puncturing her.
But he does it purposefully.
Okay.
Yeah, he does. I read that section twice because I wanted to make sure I had that right. So he does it purposely, and this goes back to the 2.0, that in 2.0, you can choose to be a hologram or solid like a human. Whereas in the previous 1.6, you were always hovering in the in-between, and it was your fear that controlled it. Now, fear doesn't really control it. They can kind of turn it on and off. But he figures out, though, how... Something to remember, though, is that he is not a hologram right now.
Right.
He is human. They're not crossed over, but he figures out how to go all clear like he used to when he wasn't in DHI.
He's the only one who can do that.
Yes. So he kind of takes a mental check on himself because he is in all this fear and rage. His friend just died, but he finds a way to go all clear from human form and cross over into the DHI form. And once he figures that out, and was another line from Wayne, you have to lose yourself. Finn thought that meant dying, but he realizes that means lose your sense of self, put aside your ego, put aside your fear. You have to put aside everything and kind of become like this higher version of yourself. And he figures out how to go all clear. So then he starts playing around with that with Maleficent, and he purposefully punches her in an all clear state, but then allows it to let go so that he can wound her. So his arm is in a dragon. And he like pulls it out. So now Maleficent has a hole in her gut.
Yeah, I think him turning into all clear, we've talked about speculating, like, could anyone else be able to transform from their human state to their hologram type state like that? I'd say it's still significant that it's only him. And my interpretation of that is just reinforcing, both for himself and for the the reader his importance. Because as we said before, like, we see a lot of his, not so much self-doubt, because in the other episodes we talked about, like, oh, he's not sure if he's the leader. I think he's come to the realization where he is the leader, but now he feels his position as leader is threatened. So this reaffirms it.
I think the thing with the 2.0 is, like, he hasn't had an opportunity to use his skill set. So, like, every character we've discussed has their skill set. Charlene is the athlete. Maybeck's the artist who can think outside the box. Willa is the encyclopedia. Philby is the tech. And we just kind of called Finn the leader. But I think, at least from my perspective, what his, quote, power is that makes him the leader is he's the believer in Disney magic. He's the true believer of, like, this is Walt, this is what the Imagineers do, this is Disney. And so he keeps all of them together. And I think the last 2 books, he hasn't had an opportunity to really use that in book 5, which is why I think he feels more threatened. Whereas, like, in the parks, he was in his element. He was around Disney magic. And that's where he thrives in communicating with characters and bringing people together. But then in that cave where he had to pull it out of himself, where he's like, I need to rescue my friends, that believing in the magic and whatever, he gets his 2.0 back. And this is why he's the leader.
A parallel to book 3 is when he's in, speaking of the parks, like, Phantasmic and up against Maleficent again as a dragon. This is kind of a redemption there. So I was kind of alluding to this question, but then I was like, oh, we got to talk about Maleficent. It seems like they're defeated, but we know we have another book. So do you think this is the last we're going to see of Maleficent, Chernabog, both? Like, is the power going to shift to another villain?
I don't think it's over, because even Finn is doubtful. Everyone else is trying to celebrate, like, good job, Finn, you defeated Maleficent. Like, that's been our goal for so long. And Chernabog's trapped in a cave. And then, to paraphrase one of his lines, he says, you know, and what have we learned from all of our experiences? It's never over.
True.
It might take a break, but it's never over. And he knows that Chernabog's just caught in a land. He's not wounded. He's a little wounded, but, like, he's just caught in a trap. He's not.
Tiadama's free.
They have Tiadama.
Yeah, but not free in that sense. But, like, she's alive, and they have her, but she is unwounded in a sense.
Right. So I think Maleficent's coming back. The evil queen ran away, so she's still at large. We have no idea where Cruella is.
She was, like, kind of in book 5, and then we didn't hear from her in book 6.
Yeah. So Cruella's still out there. I think we still have Maleficent, because we haven't had the Phantasmic showdown of Mickey Maleficent yet.
I know. Where's Mickey?
Right. So I think Chernabog will get out of the cave at some point. Maybe it'll take a bit. Maybe they'll have some time to hatch a plan when they get to Disneyland and Anaheim, LA. Like, it buys them time to continue to be on the offensive. Like, they've transitioned to in these 2 books of being more on the offense than defense. But I don't think they're gone or defeated in any way.
Yeah, so this one ends with them pulling into port in Los Angeles, and I kind of liked the cliff. It wasn't, like, exactly a cliffhanger like book 5, but, you know, they're waving to their parents who are on the dock as they're going to disembark from the ship, and there's a cast member kind of just cleaning the deck with a hose and catches their attention, and we get a little lift of the cap, a wink and a nod, and it's Wayne. So good to see him.
He's actually here in person. He's not on a radio station. He's not over an encrypted message. Like, we have Wayne in person, which we haven't had. I think, was he at Typhoon Lagoon, or was it like he left him a
He left him a message through a cast member, yeah.
Right. So, like, we haven't seen Wayne in person, I think, since early in book 3 or end of book 2, when they rescue him from Epcot.
Not sure what that'll mean, but I think that's a good kind of overall takeaway section. What did you like about these 2 books?
I like that we now have more of a plan. It's not a full plan, because we don't know where Disneyland is working into this or what the actual end game of the Overtakers is, but we know more about Chernabog. We saw the kids tested outside of the parks, where they had more of an advantage, I think. I think the cruise was cool because it put both of the Overtakers and the Kingdom Keepers on a level playing field. So I liked that in these two books, you had to see them get more creative. They couldn't go ask Disney characters for help. They couldn't,
ask
that
their
shell
parents.
game, there's a lot of this, yeah, the parents, they're there, but they're not there.
Right, they were kind of really ramping up, like, their presence, I'd say, in the last two that we discussed. But, like, now it's like, they're on the ship, but...
Well, really, it
out
was
of their
only
hair.
Finn's mom.
Well,
Finn's mom was the main
their
ally.
chaperone. Well, I just meant, like, their presence. Like,
Well, yeah.
they weren't really there to assist or interfere. One thing that I like was just a little Easter egg. When you said radio, it made me think of it. There's a reference to a famous Disney podcaster, Lou Mongello of WDW Radio. I think he was kind of both of our gateway into the Disney podcast universe. And he gets a shout out. We found out they've had Ridley and Lou have interviewed each other, and Ridley has appeared on Lou's show. So just really like a quick appearance, like he was on the ship running the radio or doing his show from there, which he has done in the past. And he helped get them in touch with Rain via the radio station on the ship.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool to have a shout out to the podcast universe.
Yeah.
In the book as well. But also Radio Disney. When was the last time you listened to Radio Disney?
I never got Radio Disney because, like, I don't think my area picked it up. Sometimes at the Disney resorts, like, there's still a Radio Disney channel, so I'd listen to it there. But we didn't have it in Maryland.
It was pretty prevalent in the Philadelphia area where I grew up.
Yeah.
Because they would do, like, Radio Disney coming to you from, and I guess they would say Philadelphia or, like, Mount Laurel, which is very close to where I grew up. So it was AM 640 was
so
my
jealous.
Radio Disney station. So I guess, I was wrong. There was some defunct stuff on here. Not defunct, but, some nostalgic things. So Radio
Disney 365.
Disney 365.
The little Disney Channel, like, segments about stuff. I liked that presence as well. So there were fun little nuggets in there. We kind of talked about switching locations. Was there a favorite of yours that they visited? I have mine. I'll let you go first.
I really enjoyed the Typhoon Lagoon. I thought that was really cool. But then also Castaway Cay with the whole bringing in Chernobog with the plane and stuff. I thought there was a lot of cool, like that shell game idea, the deception of this is what's going on over here, but something else is happening over there.
Yeah,
Castaway
Cay was my favorite as well because that's just such an interesting history. And I liked, we didn't really go into it, but like Willa and Charlene kind of get lost on the island, and it's one of those things where like it's a pretty big island, but really just like the beach line is developed and the rest of it is a forest. Like there's a bike path, and that's kind of where they get lost. So it was cool to, I guess, see like the other side and the backstage elements of the island for me. So they were there for a good chunk of book 5, and I enjoyed those chapters.
Yeah, it was cool to see the characters go off park because, again, like I said, I think that creates that new challenging and level playing field between the Overtakers and the Kingdom Keepers, that they're both out of their elements.
And they're in the real world, and there's real world stakes.
Yes, and so I think that's what's important, particularly about these two books, and what I liked about this is that we're presented that, this isn't some magic game anymore, like, it is dangerous. I mean, look at Dillard. So that's there, but for me, my favorite locations were still the ones that had the Disney connection, because I think, particularly for people like you and me, just that idea of knowing more about the backstage and the intricacies of how Disney works, I think really had a lot more to write about. I saw more detail in those sections than when he was writing about the jungles and stuff, just because it's not as specific of a location.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you have any predictions for our final book? I can't believe it's already here.
I know. It's been a fun series. For me, I really think we are going to see Mickey again. I think Disneyland's going to unlock some magic for these characters because it is Walt's park. So I think some more Imagineering stuff, maybe. Some things just have more power with it.
There's been a lot of references throughout. I mean, oh my gosh, like going all the way back to book 1, like Walt's My First Pen and like Walt's Legacy. So to be in like Walt's original park, I think you're right. Like we're going to get a lot more ties to that, which should be fun.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that most of this series takes place in Walt Disney World, and all the characters. I'm curious what characters we're going to encounter, the Disney characters in Disneyland, because our characters live in both parks. So what ones have been hanging out in Walt Disney World, but what ones could be really useful that have been hanging out in Disneyland?
Well, as you said, I hope we get more Mickey, but the one that comes to my mind is Sleeping Beauty, or like Aurora herself, because Maleficent has been the big villain here, and at Disneyland it's Sleeping Beauty's castle. So I would love to see her.
Yeah, like Aurora and Philip might live there because that's her castle. So maybe we'll get some Philip fighting alongside Philip and Finn.
Yes.
Some Philip and Finn action. And hopefully Sleeping Beauty doesn't get any of them trapped alongside her sleeping in the syndrome.
It's the syndrome and she's sleeping. Any other characters you can think of, like, tied to Disneyland specifically? Ooh, I'm going to throw a Roger Rabbit reference in.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Listeners, if you listen to some other episodes,
we just like to talk about Roger Rabbit.
We love Roger Rabbit. We think he's underrated and people need to appreciate him more. And his only presence is in Disneyland.
Yeah, so Toontown, and he has an attraction out there. I don't really know what he would do, but I just wanted to make the reference. I guess, he could, throw in little hijinks and stuff, like taking some of that, animated power to help them.
Race by in the taxi and pick up the keepers.
Okay, I thought of something. The whole thing that we talked about in the last episode, Mickey went missing because they literally captured him in his house in Toontown at Magic Kingdom, which closed, and then they tied it to that. Toontown still exists out there, so maybe it'll be a battle for Toontown.
Ooh, that'd be cool. Yeah, I want to see the Fab Five come back. Some more Minnie. I want to see Minnie reunited with Mickey.
I know.
Be so sweet. But yeah, there's lots of characters that could come into play here. It will be very interesting. So other than characters and stuff, it is the final book. What's your ideal ending? How do you want this to wrap up?
Honestly, I don't know, because this one took such a turn that I almost don't want to predict too much. I just want to be taken on the journey, because that was really fun for me in the climax of this last section.
I think we'll kind of get a happily ever after ending. Just kind of, pure Disney magic, and, they all lived happily ever after, or things go the way they're supposed to. For our main characters, we'll see how they turn out, but I'd like to hope that, good's supposed to triumph over evil. This is a Disney series. But I am curious to see, again, that transition, what they talk about with the beta, if the ending is going to be, never mind, we want to keep you, or yes, you are being transitioned out. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean,
is it going to be bittersweet or truly happily ever after?
Ridley's had it all planned out at this point, so I think he has a vision in mind. It'll just be curious to see what that is. So Book 7 should be coming towards you at the end of August, but in the meantime, I'll wrap us up as usual with some resources. Emily, what did you think of as you were reading this, connections for our listeners?
So it's going to sound silly, but as soon as we were in Typhoon Lagoon, it's been a long time for me since I've been in any of the water parks, but the first thing I thought of was the Beach Party at Walt Disney World sing-along.
That was one of my faves.
So if you like the water parks and you're not in Florida like I am, but you need to see a little bit of it, that sing-along, I feel like it's the only film that really showcases Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon, where you get inside there into the parks to see it. So, it's pure 1990s fashion and nostalgia. Super fun. I highly recommend that if you want to go down the water park route. But then also the closest thing I could think of to this Imagineering journal and Chernabog, in this book, is the Imagineering field guides that you've mentioned before, as well as Lou Prosperi on one of our past interviews, that they are great resources that if you want to get more into a mind of Imagineer and what it's like for them to design parks, there is an Imagineering field guide for every domestic park here in the U.S.
Yeah, I bet they were sometimes pulled from the actual journals and library in Walt Disney World. For me, I thought of the cruise line side of things. So 2 things for me. There are some great Travel Channel documentaries. If you just go on YouTube and search Disney Cruise Line documentary, a few different ones pop up. One that came to mind was Disney Cruise Line Secret Stories and Magic Behind the Scenes. So that's really going to be a good frame of reference for some of like the things that power the ship, how the ship operates, a lot of what I imagine Ridley got to experience in his backstage pieces. You can't go backstage on the ship as a guest, but you know I love my tours. And on the ship, there's all kinds of activities each day, especially when you have a day at sea where you're not in port, and they offer free onboard tours. It's usually like 45 minutes to an hour. You just show up at the meeting place that's listed on your Disney Cruise Line app or your personal navigator printed in your room. And it's a cast member who takes a group of you like throughout the ship and just points out some of the details, some of the story, the history behind it. So not necessarily a backstage tour, but one that definitely immerses you in like the heritage, the design, and storytelling of those ships. And they're free, so worth checking out on a day at sea if you're ever on board.
I should have checked out that travel documentary before reading these 2 books. That might have helped me a little bit with envisioning the ships.
True. Should have texted it to you. Oh well. Now you can go back and it's still fun to watch. I'll watch those Disney documentaries from time to time, just for fun, to get a little fix.
But yeah, so listeners, that is where we're going to leave you for now. So either catch up on your reading and catch up with us, or pick up book 7 like Courtney and I are going to, so we can finish this series and finally have our questions answered. So in the meantime, while you're reading, you can always catch us on social media. You can find us, Book of the Mouse Club, on Twitter and Instagram at Book of the Mouse. And like we've said before, we would love to hear from you, especially if you're reading the series along with us, with comments, ideas, things you want to hear us discuss as we go into the end of this series. So please email us at bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. And you can find me, Emily, on Instagram and Twitter at Emily_McD.
And you can find me, Courtney, on Instagram at Great Gutsby and on Twitter at Courtney_Guth. I think I'm going to take us out with a little quote from Dillard, kind of to honor our fallen hero here. And in his last moments with Finn, he offers this advice and says, "If you don't take a chance, you don't have a chance." And I found that very profound.
Yes, so listeners, we're going to leave you with that idea. So over the next month, try something new. Let's honor Dillard and, all step out of our comfort zones and have a leap of faith somewhere in the next month. And in the meantime, guys, we will catch you at the end of August for the series finale.
We'll see you real soon. Bye.
Toodles.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.